I'll start my speech in 3, 2, 1. Well, let's start about the economy. We know that the economy is the inventions that human needs, that human makes for their own kind. And we know that the currency that they are using the economy is the money. And we know money is really valuable for our life. And it could be, and we could make money, and we really need money to increasing our quality of life. And what I want to say right now is economy is very important for the growth of the country, for the growth of the individual, and also of the growth of how the work will work in the future. And the thing is, I will talk about why the education of the economy is really important in the individual parts. And first, we know that we know that the humans is divided into two things. First is the lower class, and the second one is the middle class. And we know that they are having a really difference. For example, they are having a different money because of their job or because of their skill. And why the education of economy is really important, because it could really help them to managing their money. For example, we know that the human has something called needs and want. Need is the primary that they really need for their life, and want is something, the secondary, that they need to increasing what they want, to increase, to make their hearts to become happy, and etc. And if there's people who are a lower class, of course we know that they didn't have a higher money than the middle class one. But why the education economy is important, because it did not make, we did not force the lower class to go into the lifestyle of the middle class, because we know if something that middle class say about the needs is the luxury car, luxury house, etc. What lower class need for that is only foods and home for them to wait, to stay and take a rest. And if there are learnings about the economy, of course there could be managing the money, and it could be also increasing the quality of life. It could be help them to making a good life decision. For example, if the lower class have some amount of money and they did not go into a lifestyle of the middle class, of course they could be using that money to having a business or something, or they could be renting something and rent it to people, or they could be paying for some courses and use it for the people to getting a job, and it could be make them to become middle class. And that's why economy important individual. And the next part is we want to talk about the economy the more big parts, of course the words. And we know that in the modern words, we know the people is using the different start of the economy, and the most important one is the capitalism. Well, we know that lots of things that people say, if the capitalism is really bad for us, why did not we using the different start of economy in our life? Well, we know that the people say if the capitalism is bad because they making the rich people to become rich and the poor people to become poor. But we cannot really handle that. Why? Because in the stable world, we really need the job or the works of the rich people and the poor people. But what we need is about how they live, about how they could afford foods and how they could afford a house to pay to stay rest at night. And when we are talking about the history, but in 20th century, there is a country calling a communist country that is using the economy. They did not use the capitalism, but they using their own economy. It's called the communism economy. And why it didn't work until now? Well, it's because if you are a doctor and your friends are worker, you still have the same amount of money for your payment for the month. And why it's bad? It's because they become lacks of innovations. They think that if I work hard and my friend didn't work hard, why did we get the same amount of money? And it makes them to become more lazier. And the other one is because of the government, who is really do a corruptions. Even though we know that in the communist country, the people is really poor, but the government is really rich because they do a lot of corruption. all of the best productions that their people is increasing and they are selling, is the money is all into their government, and the one who work for the government is become really rich in the communist country. And that's why we see that the Soviet country and all of the country back in 20th century is become very tired, and what we have right now is only the capitalism country and the social country like Chinese right now. And back to capitalism, and why it's still good for us to become like, why capitalism is still good for us? Well, because of one, we know that the capitalism is the country where they are using the free market. There is the rules between them because the government did not really taking part like the communism country, so it could be making the people to become more rich. And why? Because they have the skill to do, because they have the education, they have the knowledge, and they have the connection with the other people. And we know that, for example, I say about the USA. USA didn't have really big natural resources like our country Indonesia. Well, what we do right now in Indonesia is just the increasing of agriculture and just selling it to the other country. But why the USA do is really important. What they have is only oil, but the most valuable thing in their country is the dollar. They're using dollar because the dollar have a really big valuable in the world. And why? They getting it from the tax for the company, because the country is the capitalism, and because even though they didn't have a really good natural resources, they still could be a better country. They still could be the country that the world knows if they're rich because of their dollar. And that's why capitalism is really good for the country, and it's also good for the humanity, because if you have a really good skill, you could just go to capitalist country like USA, because they need your skill, and it could be increasing your quality of life. And it's also good for the population in that country, because they could have a better education, they could have a new invention in technology and in health, and they could have a really good technology in there for the humanity, all for the quality of their life.